Hello and welcome. Now, how would you feel if you are 8,000 feet in the air and suddenly the aircraft's hydraulics lock and therefore you can't continue on your journey and you have to come back and do a high-speed landing, whatever that is, causing the tires to screech and smoke all over the place? Indeed, out of the 77 passengers, 2 got injured, the rest were okay, but I can imagine how frightening that was. However, just a year ago, there was a helicopter crash killing 10 people. 2 months ago, there was another incident. There seemed to be one too many incidents. We all remember the cargo plane from Nigeria that sped across the runway, went into the airport, the Barima Camp Road, killing the passengers in the trotro. What are the investigations that we've had, telling us what's going wrong? Are we just waiting for that one big accident before we come out and explain? Or indeed there are some investigations going on that we don't know? This is a matter that we don't have to wait before it hits us on the face. With me in the studio today is Nanaya Akwada, who is CEO of Bureau for National Safety, Bureau for Public Safety, to educate us on how the needs that we have to do with precaution. We'll also have 2 people join us on the phone, and when I come back from the break, I would introduce them. My name is Nanan Sakwao, and this is PM Express. Well, thank you for staying. Transport safety in Ghana. It's gotten to a point where I don't know if it's just a clear disregard for human life or sheer ignorance that we don't know about health and safety with regards to transport. But it's just getting very serious. We're going to start with aviation, and I'm sure by all means we'll end with motor cars and its safety as well. And I have with me Nanaya Akwada, who's Executive Director, CEO of Bureau for Public Safety, and indeed he's done a lot of education so that we create an awareness of our own safety. Joining us on the phone later will be Air Commodore Opoku Lampo, who's an aviation expert, so he will definitely educate us on that. And then Joyce Bawa Muntari, who is the Deputy Transport Minister, will also join us and tell us what government is doing to help improve safety within the transport industry. And my own brother is here now. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's really been a while. It's good to be with you.
And there's a lot of incidents happening. Now we're moving into the aviation industry. Now I know obviously you can't speak to the technicalities of aviation, but we're just looking at the general safety. And I just want to find out, if you are privy to any investigations as to some of the spate of these accidents going on. Have you got any records to say it's because of A, B, or C?
Well, I'll just be very honest with you that since we founded the Bureau of Public Safety, we've been interested in incidents in this country, including aviation incidents. In the aviation circles, they call it significant incidents. We have made attempts at securing a couple of accident reports, but to date, we've not been successful. So yes, we hear of incidents happening. We hear of, with respect to the June 2nd, 2012, the runway excursion, we knew there was a committee set up to investigate it and submit their reports. At the end of the day, the report never got to the public, even though we requested for it. So most reports have been in the bosom of either the minister or the ministry.
Let me acknowledge Air Commodore Opoku Lampo, who's an aviation expert. I'm sure he can set the tone so that we take it from here. Air Commodore, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you. The name is Pumpuni, not Pupulampu. Pumpuni.
Oh, Pumpuni. Thank you very much.
Pumpuni.
Pumpuni.
Yes.
Thank you.
KK Pumpuni.
KK Pumpuni. Thank you very much. Has there been one too many accidents, and we haven't had any investigations? But I mean, you could probably educate us as to whether it's the norm or there's something out of the ordinary.
Well, I can't think of accidents being norm. We all try to be safe all the time when flying. So if there's an accident, the most important thing is that we should be able to investigate and take corrective action. We never hear of any investigations that have taken place and what actions that have been taken. All we hear is another accident, and the second accident comes on. See? So that is how I would say, I'll put it.
Obviously, you're a pilot. I mean, before you take off, is there any standard protocol that a pilot has to go through before you take the bird up in the air?
Yes. Yes. First of all, each aircraft has to do what we call pre-flight inspection. Mm-hmm. The pilot has to go around it. There are things physically that he must check against what the technicians have done and recorded in the servicing book.
Okay.
There are others that are so complicated they will not appear possible for you to check. You rely on the technician's inspection and his signature in the servicing book stating that he has done the check on that particular thing.
Okay.
But those physical ones, like going around the aircraft, looking at your tires and looking at your tire pressures, looking at whether there are leakages of oil and things like that on the aircraft, or any physical thing that you see as being abnormal on the aircraft, you go round, and after that, before you also sign an acceptance book, before you go and start the aircraft and check your engine. Also, there are specific things that you must check when you open your engine. And then when everything seems all right to you, then you take it off. You take off the aircraft. You understand me?
Yes, I understand. If, let's say, the ties were bald and you could see the thread on the ties, as a pilot, can you say, look, I'm not taking this thing off, or you don't have a choice? Because the company says takes off, you have to take off.
No. He has a choice. He has a complete choice. The tie, in fact, a lot of spares on the aircraft are lived. We call it lived because we are given a time duration or the number of times that you might use a particular item, like a tie. A tie might be lived and say that this tie must be used for 6 months or 100 landings, whichever one is earlier.
Whether they are bald or not, you have to change it.
Yes. If they are not bald, if it's been on for 6 months, if it's live for 6 months, and it's been on for 6 months, and he's used it only for 10 times, he is forced to change that tie.
I see.
Because the life expiration time has come.
Okay.
So you are lived and say that this part can be used for 6 months or, say, 50 landings. Whichever one comes first, you must change the tie. There are others that you can physically see that due to other rough breaking, the threads are showing.
Yeah.
Either way, you must be able to reject it as a pilot. You don't take it off at all.
Won't the company fire you to say, look, you're sacked because you refuse to fly?
The company cannot ask you to fly when the aircraft is not serviceable. He can't. They can't.
I see.
They cannot ask you to fly the aircraft when it's not serviceable. When there's evidence that it's not serviceable, they cannot ask you to fly. You'll be endangering your life of passengers and outside the life of others who are also outside.
Okay.
So they cannot ask you to go and commit that suicide.
Something like the hydraulics, is this something that you could pick up, or is one of those things that can happen when it happens?
Well, these are things like hydraulic. It could be that the pipe got burst when they were taxiing, when they were taking off. Otherwise, as you go around and looking at your tie, you will see leakages, and that should become straight thing to you that is abnormal, that you have hydraulic fluid flowing down or dropping off. Okay?
Yeah.
Straight away, you should draw the attention of those people to it that this is happening, and therefore they must correct it before you take off. If you don't see anything like that, then like a tie can be, damaged. It could be damaged, but you cannot see it physically until it's used a little before it bursts out completely. Because if hydraulic fluid indications show that you're down, it means probably in the course of your takeoff, the system might have broken off.
Okay.
So leakages could come, and then if they had landed in Takoradi or wherever, you still would have had a problem because there won't be any hydraulic fluid in it, and therefore the brakes may not work well.
And I know investigations having gone on, but in a case like this, would it be the engineer's fault? Would it be the pilot's fault? I mean, who should be the first person to spot such a thing?
Well, it's difficult for the pilot to see it now. If he didn't notice it before taking off, and it's after landing, there's indication that this is the case. The pilot only could see this on his gauge, showing that the gauge is showing a shortage of hydraulic fluid. Okay?
Yeah.
Which straight away tells him that the fluid is leaking.
But could it be that the system just jammed and that there was hydraulic fluid? So on the pilot's gauge, it would still read that he has enough hydraulic fluid. However, the system has jammed. Could it be that, or?
Well, I don't know. These are quite critical things that we like engineers or beyond investigation to find out.
Okay.
Because apparently there was the levels of the hydraulic was okay when he took off. All right.
Yeah, okay.
Then he noticed on the course of the flight, he noticed that the fluid is the gauge is indicating a shortage of hydraulic fluid.
Oh, okay. Okay. So there was that indication.
So he turns around and comes to land, and he has problem with his tires. All right. So that's the sequence of the thing that investigators should follow.
With my very few times that I've sat in an aeroplane, I just realized when you're sat by the window, anytime he's going to land, the flaps really like lower to catch the wind in a way. Yeah, but this time he hasn't got the flaps. So how is he bringing the aeroplanes down?
Oh, well, the aircraft can be land. You can land the aircraft without flaps.
Oh, I see.
Yes, you can land the aircraft without flaps because the difference is that when you land without flaps, you need a longer runway.
Okay.
Because when you lower the flaps, it gives you a drag and helps it to stop.
I see.
All right. So if you land without, you do a flapless landing, your speed is slightly high. And if you've got a long runway, then you can stop. After a runway is quite long, that if you need to land without flaps in the beginning of it, you stop by the middle of it.
Commodore, with flaps, you'll be landing at about 180 kilometers an hour. Without flaps, what speed are we looking at?
You say with a flap, you're landing at what?
About 180 kilometers an hour?
With flaps?
Yeah, with flaps.
Without flaps, probably you'll be landing about another 20 on top of that.
Okay, wow.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It must be a frightening experience for the passengers. How about you, the pilots? Do you take it, are you calm about it, or are you also nervous?
Yes, you must be calm. You must be very calm. And the passengers, you must be able to let them know that everything's under control. Everything's under control. And each aircraft has got its own drills in emergencies.
Okay.
So the pilots must be conversant with the drills that they should. If they've lost fluid, they should be able to know what to do, really. Probably they didn't need to jam on brakes, you know, and then let the thing roll without much brakes.
Okay.
So as you pump brakes, then you pump in hydraulic down, more hydraulic fluid is going down.
Okay.
Like your vehicle,
sure.
when your brake fluid goes, when you press the brake fluid, it pumps the thing down. It pumps the fluid, you know.
Now,
so if he was aware that he didn't have enough fluid in it, probably the best thing is to have landed without much brakes. Let the thing roll on its own and then sort of come to a standstill.
Now, is the public entitled to know? Because this is just one of incidents. I mean, there's the helicopter crash, there was the cargo aeroplane. I mean, is the public entitled to know that it was because of A, B, C, D, that's why this happened? Or these things are matter of national security and therefore kept within?
No, it's not a matter of national security. It's not. Civil aviation has a responsibility to let us know what's happening. They have. My own personal experience about this like that. Our present civil aviation organization is not up to the task. One, the chief executive has been sacked or left, and they asked the financial controller to be acting as chief executive of such a technical area. And I know also that the chairman of the board also is not a pilot; he's just an administrator. So who is actually supervising those people who must provide? You know, these people cannot ask any questions from down. What happened? They can't, because they have no technical knowledge. And this is a very technical organization that we shouldn't play politics with it. We should use people who should know. It's an international area, technical and international.
Yeah.
All right? So we shouldn't just put anybody there. We should find people who know, who understand, and give us a good service for our safety.
That's a very important point you've raised,
Yes.
Commodore. Yeah.
Yes. We just don't call people onto the board and so on, just like that. We should find people who must contribute so that the organization works properly. Ask them whether they have a new chief executive since Air Commodore Manfi left about 3 or 4 months ago. They don't. They just ask the financial controller to be acting. The financial controller, what does he know about aircraft? He just knows funds, money. That's all. Unfortunately, unfortunately for him also, his whole board also is headed by, though an Air Force officer, right? But he's an administrator in the Air Force. He's not a pilot, doesn't know technical things. Right? There are a lot of technically qualified charges there who must be put in place so they can use their note to help. Put pressure on the inspection directorate for demand what must be done.
Yes.
All right?
Well, I want to say thank you very, very much. And during the course of the show, if anything comes up and I have to call you, I'll be quick on the phone to come for clarification. But thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, that is quite revealing.
Yeah, I want to run away from the studio.
Quite revealing, you know. It never occurred to me that, you know, whoever is running even the aviation center hasn't got that technical know-how. And therefore, you know, certain things might be missed.
Yes, and you know, what really strikes me in the submission of the retired Commodore is the fact that he says it, and I believe it, that our civil aviation is not up to scratch currently. The way it stands, it is not up to the task, and it's so obvious for anybody to see. And for us at the Bureau of Public Safety, we have drawn a lot of confidence from Commodore Pumpuni's submissions tonight. There are a few things that probably moving forward I would want to speak to. I don't know when you are going to get the Deputy Minister on phone.
Yeah,
so
we'll try and get him to join the show.
I have monitored the media. I have read on 2 of very popular sites. One site saying that the planes of Stabo have been grounded. 2 of their aircrafts have been grounded. And then the other side says all their aircrafts, the management of Starboard have grounded their aircrafts for inspection. There's a conflict, and probably if the deputy minister comes, she can clarify, because
this evening the grounding thing has been left off, so they're allowed to fly from tomorrow.
Well, but it really didn't matter. Even if it was grounded for an hour, we want to know who ordered the grounding and why it was ordered. It's very, very important, and it's crucial to some submissions that the Bureau of Public Safety will be considering between now and next Tuesday, when it's expected that whatever committee, with all due respect, whatever committee that has been put in place to investigate this incident are going to submit their report. I think that knowing who grounded the aircraft, whether it's for an hour or 2, and the reason why it was grounded is very, very critical for the way forward for aviation, civil aviation in Ghana. So I believe that when the Deputy Minister comes online, she should be able to clarify these for us, and then we can move forward on this discussion. But for me, really, I am terrified.
I mean, let videos know that the reason why I asked about the ties was I would save the airline's name. But I flew this airline, we landed in Kotoka, and I look at the ties, and they're completely bald with the thread, everything. So I take my phone to take a photo, and they say, oh, no, you can't take, it's a security zone and everything. But I mean, Nanaya, it was bald. I mean, with the, you could see the thread.
Well, I've seen worse things on some of the aircrafts, and I was telling some other host this morning that when I enter a domestic flight, it's bye-bye to my family. I begin to relive the memories we live for the 45 or 30 minutes that I'm flying. And it's true. It's no joke. For the 35, my wife will tell you every time I get on board, I send her, I love you. When I get there, I'll let you know. Just so in the unlikely event that something happens, she remembers my last words, that it was, I love you. I think it's very serious, and I think that we must, as a people, ensure that this is the last time we will be encountering avoidable, significant incidents in the civil aviation sector. This should be the last time.
We're going to take a break here. When I come back, I will find out, should naming and shaming, you know, maybe help the airlines to check their services and provide better service? Because I also have another experience. My last flight to Kumasi was absolutely horrible. Just as we are about to touch down, they pull up again. You know, should we name and shame these airlines so that people switch to airlines who have better services? When we come back, we'll try and get Joyce Bauer on the phone, so she'll help us, and she's the Deputy Minister for Transport. So don't move. Transport safety in Ghana. Thank you for staying. It's naming and shaming. Would it help? Nanaya, that if I mentioned the name of the airline that had that bald tire, or the airline that I flew last, and we got there and they said the weather wasn't good and the flight was horrible indeed. Just about a few feet before we touched down, you know, they had to power back off again. It was so horrible. I mean, should we name and shame them? Would it help? Or
for me, we think that it's important to do naming and shaming, but we have to do it responsibly, because the aviation sector can be very tricky. It can be very, very tricky. You could observe some things from a very lay point of view. It will look very, very unsafe, but in actual sense, it is the safest thing to do. A typical example is when flights are taken off, and then you are all asked to raise your blinds so that you could see the ground when it's taken off. From a very commonsensical point of view, you want to think that, oh, if you are scared, why don't you just close the blinds so you don't really see what's going on? But I think that experts have researched into this, and they think that it is safer, it is much more appropriate for people to be able to see the environment when the plane is taking off. So yes, we should go ahead and do naming and shaming, but we must do this from a very learned point of view.
Now, let me acknowledge Joyce Bauer, who's Deputy Transport Minister. to help us with the government side of things. Hello, Joyce, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, Joyce, we're talking, obviously, aviation is the subject matter, and the last incident was the one with Starboard. But before then, we can go back and have a catalogue of issues, the plane from Nigeria, the helicopter crash. Have you received any concrete investigation as to why it happened or what happened?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to say thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would like to say that as and when these incidents have occurred, the Ministry of Transport has been very proactive and has actually constituted various committees of inquiry to come up with an investigative report and, of course, to come up with some recommendations on how to resolve the matter or prevent it from happening again in future. So, yes, we have always had these committees in the past, and each of those airline incidents was actually duly investigated and reports submitted to the Ministry of Transport.
So, earlier this year, there was a helicopter crash off the coast of Takoradi, killing all 10 passengers on board. What was the cause of that?
Well, what happened in that particular one was actually to do with a fault that the helicopter developed. Remember that this helicopter was a privately owned one, owned by one of the oil companies working in the Western region. This was a helicopter that had been in operation since that company started its operations. It had an excellent track record in terms of safety, but it still developed this fault and went aground instantly, causing loss of life and what have you.
In almost every plane crash, there's a human element. So with this helicopter crash, was it down to the pilot or down to the engineers? Whose fault was it?
It was down to faulty equipment, actually. It's something that they could not foresee. I keep emphasizing that first and foremost, let's remember that no matter what sort of maintenance is carried out or undertaken on all this equipment, there is always a little margin of error which is bound to cause fault. What the regulators do is to ensure that we mitigate the risk to the best of our ability, or at least to the best that science has available. Even with excellent track records, some faults will still occur and cause the grounding of a helicopter or other. These are sometimes very difficult to explain, which is why they are referred to as accidents. But if you're talking about our records, the statistics prove that Ghana indeed has an enviable safety record. Since 2010, we've only reported about 5 of such incidents, including what happened yesterday. Unfortunate as the situation is, our role as a government agency, as the Ministry of Transport, is to ensure the safety of our passengers, to ensure that these aircraft are safe for travel and fit for the journeys. Remember that these both aircraft are certified by airworthy certificates to ensure that they are able to undertake the journey. So yes, there are some accidents that are unforeseeable. There are some accidents that we are unable to determine before they take off. Remember that yesterday, this aircraft had been duly serviced. It had been inspected by the regulator. It takes off, and then something goes wrong. It's called a hydraulic fault. It is not something that we could reasonably have foreseen. So sometimes, yes, these things happen.
Joyce, I'm not going to name the aircraft, but you're talking about safety and duly checked and everything. I flew on one of these aircraft, and when we touched down in Kotoka, the ties were bald. Not just one, but the ties at the back were bald, and I could see the thread. I, personally.
Was this not after the emergency landing?
No. This was an okay flight. There was no emergency landing. I'm talking about a plane that I flew, from Kumasi to Accra. Well, on the return journey, I looked at the ties, and it was just completely bald.
That is most unfortunate. This is not an incident that has come to our attention. So these are some of the lapses that we probably have in the system, and I don't think anybody reported this incident to the Ministry of Transport or to the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. Was there an incident, was there an accident in that particular incident that you were mentioning?
No, there wasn't, but I think I've been a very irresponsible citizen because I should have reported it. I should have reported it. So I own up.
This is why I would say all the time that safety on our roads, safety in our skies is a collective responsibility. Passengers have rights as well. So when you purchase a ticket, you find out that you have an agreement, terms and conditions for which you bought that particular airline. So if you realize that something is wrong or is not right, you must, as a matter of urgency, and to protect all the lives of other passengers, report it immediately to the regulator, or at least bring it to the attention of the Ministry of Transport. To be honest with you, the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority is actually part of the International Civil Aviation Organization. They have an enviable safety record. But of course, there are always some incidents that will probably escape their scrutiny. And this is where the public comes in handy. What happened yesterday was most unfortunate. We are lucky that thankfully we had very experienced pilots on board who were able to land in all those difficulties and challenges that we faced with. We had 2 passengers who were injured, and we're wishing them a very speedy recovery. But going forward, we are going to introduce very stringent checks. We're going to introduce very stringent control systems.
Okay, Joyce,
we're going to ensure that these mandatory inspections are improved upon to the best of our ability. But of course, despite all these things that will be put in place, there will always still be some incidents or accidents. What we must ensure is that they do not recur, and what the regularity with which they happen is at least minimal.
Joyce, if I go back to the cargo plane from Nigeria, is the report out yet, and what happened to it? Because it's one of those things that everybody's still waiting for, what the committee came up with and what the report was.
To be honest with you, the report has actually been presented to the Honorable Minister for Transport. And of course, the recommendations that were contained in that report have duly been forwarded to the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. Normally, when these reports are filed with the Ministry of Transport, what we do is we invite all the stakeholders. They then bring their comments with regards to the comments which have been raised. And this has already been done. So
I'm talking about the general public, the media stuff.
Well, to be honest with you, there are ways in which we handle this information. Most often than not, what we do is that we call a stakeholder meeting first. But of course, in the past, we haven't actually made these reports public. And I would say that maybe that is a procedural thing, which we can always correct. The records are at the Ministry of Transport, the reports are there, and should you want to see them, we can always make it available to you. To be honest, these are very bulky documents, making it very difficult for you to publish completely. Maybe going forward, we can actually summarize the salient points that are in these reports and make them public. And I think this is a very welcome contribution, a welcome recommendation, and a proposal that we're willing to explore.
I mean, in all jurisdictions, and civil aviation is part of international body, all aircraft accidents are reported. I mean, some even do a documentary about the details of the aircraft crash. So I don't know, why are we keeping it a secret?
I don't think we're keeping it a secret. I think at the time when this thing happened, there was a press conference called by the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Transport, and all the other stakeholders.
No, I'm talking about the findings of why it happened, not when it happened.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. Some portions of the findings were actually put out. The complete document wasn't put out. But remember that most often than not, what happens is that the actual incident is greeted with a lot of opprobrium and public interest and attention. But when the reports come, even though we publish the reception of the report by the Ministry of Transport, the interest that is generated is not as keen as that we generate when we have these incidents. I think that is part
with that cargo plane, was it a pilot error or was it a plane fault?
Oh, it was a fault. It developed a fault. It was mainly a cargo carrier.
Yeah.
It didn't even have any passengers on board except the 2 persons who were manning it.
And it wasn't a pilot error?
Absolutely not. In fact, most of it was blamed on engine failure. And remember that this was a joint responsibility between the government of Ghana and the government of Nigeria.
And it was engine failure.
Exactly.
Let me quickly move forward to who grounded the Starboard planes yesterday?
The Ghana Civil Aviation Authority on the instructions of the Ministry of Transport.
Why?
They actually brought this to our attention. Well, first and foremost, we want to ensure that our passengers are safe. We want to ensure that the aircraft which are carrying these passengers are duly being maintained and are likewise safe. What happened was that after this incident was reported, that particular aircraft was actually pulled to the hangar after the emergency evacuation for further checks to ensure that whatever caused this incident would be duly recorded and reported accordingly.
Is this something that they saw that make you concerned to look at the other ones?
Well, certainly. You remember that there was one incident in the past where I think there was a little fire outbreak, and it was the same brand.
Yeah.
So when this one also happened, we felt that there was a strong need to ensure additional safety measures are put in place.
Are you confident that this plane